What's up guys? Today we'll be checking out The Suicide Squad on 4K Blu-ray. Remember, this isn't a review on how good or bad the movie is, I'm just going to share some of my thoughts on the audio and the video quality. Now let's go over a few tech specs. The movie was shot in 6K, 8K, and in IMAX. It's got a 4K DI, it's rated R, runtime is 132 minutes, and the aspect ratio is 1.90. So you will get the full IMAX ratio with no letterbox bars, and the audio is in Dolby Atmos. When I first reviewed this on HBO Max, I had to turn up the volume about 10 dB more than normal. On the physical disc, that wasn't the case. The compression is gone and the dynamics are back, which makes this a more detailed presentation. That being said, it's a very aggressive mix with a ton of overhead activity. The only thing is that it's mostly a static mix for about 97% of the runtime, as you can see here in the Atmos viewer. This particular scene is just the team in the jungle, but you can see how active all the channels are. The scene's got a ton of ambiance in the lower and the high channels, and it's got a huge sense of space. The first big action scene in Chapter 1 has got a ton of gunfire and explosions. You'd think there'd be yellow objects floating everywhere, but the effects stay stationary for the most part. I mean, you can still hear every bullet zipping through the different channels, and there's a lot of effects floating above your head, which will immerse you in all directions. Now, unfortunately, there are huge action pieces where you'd think the high channels would kick on, specifically the building collapsing in Chapter 10, where most of the action remains in the lower channels. Now, there are maybe a handful of parts where you do get a bunch of objects that are dynamically moving around. I think the coolest part comes in Chapter 6 when the rats are surrounding King Shark. You can hear them start scattering through the trees in the lower and top channels, which you can follow by seeing how the yellow balls are swirling around. There's a couple other parts, but I think that this one is the best.
No one likes to show off.
Unless what they're showing off is dope as fuck.
As far as bass response, there's a crazy amount of LFE during the whole Starro escape in Chapter 11. It'll shake the teeth out of your mouth, it dips so low. On the HBO Max stream, it wasn't quite as good. All the explosions will give your subs a definite workout, and those Bloodsport gunshots will give your body a pounding. As far as video quality, this is one of the 4K crispiest and cleanest movies to come out this year. If you're a grain hater, I think you're gonna love it. That said, it's not as digitally clean as Gemini Man because there's still a very, and I mean very faint layer of grain. You'll still see fine cotton fibers in the characters' costumes and even how crazy detailed King Shark's digital skin is. The digital effects blended perfectly fine with all the live action and never seemed out of place or drew attention to itself. Unless you count the giant starfish, but even still, that looked really cool.
¿Qué diablos es eso?
The HDR gave the picture a fairly bright overall image during the brighter portions of the movie. The colors had really good pop and saturation. Their splashes of vivid primary colors and peak highlights can get pretty bright from the sunsets and all the explosions. Black levels were solid throughout with great shadow detail in even the darkest scenes without anything being lost or crushed. If you're new to the channel and you're into new movies and audio and video gear and want to see more videos like this, be sure to tap the subscribe button for new weekly videos. So for audio, I'm going to go with a 9.7. There's an ample amount of immersiveness during the quieter parts and even more during the big action scenes. Now there are some parts where you'd think the overheads would be active when in fact they aren't, but for the most part the movie's got great surround. It's got killer bass, and overall, it was a top-notch experience. For video, it's one of the best I've seen this year. There's loads of fine detail everywhere, and the HDR made for a colorful and dark movie all at the same time. So I'm gonna have to give it a 9.8. If you're someone who's been disappointed with all these IMAX movies being cropped down the letterbox for all these home releases, I think you'll be overjoyed when you pop in this movie. I think it's one of the best looking and best sounding 4Ks to come out this year, and should definitely be in your collection. Well, what are your thoughts on Suicide Squad on 4K Blu-ray? If this was in your top 10 this year, where would it be? Leave a comment down below and let us know. Now, if you do want to grab this disc, I'll leave some links for it down below in the video's description. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you want, you can follow us on social media, and if you want to support the channel and get exclusive content or great discounts on audio and video gear, then stop by our Patreon page. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again in the next video.